Shanuza, we have how long for this session? I just want to make sure that we keep time for it also as well, appreciating everybody's time. Is it 1 hour or?
Yes, we have 1 hour and the recording is on.
Okay, we have 1 hour. Okay, great. Okay, maybe just a great morning to everyone. We have both Robert, Yon, Jordan on the call. Jordan's going to do most of our walkthrough today. And I believe that the context of today's call is actually talking about allocate and seeing whether this TE allocate can actually fit some of Temasek Poly's requirement, especially in the area of student fitting. Now, Jordan, do you want to go through with the slides with the people before we do the demo, or do you want me or RJ to do that?
No, you can jump in and I'll have time to show everything we need to see today.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so everyone can see my slides? Yes? All right, great.
Yes.
All right, so I'm not going to take too long on the slides, but it's good for us to actually have a bit of a recap and a macro overview of TimeEdit as an academic operations platform. Now, obviously, I think some of you have been to the TE Con that we had in Singapore. You understand that TimeEdit is more than just a scheduling company and doing that. It does many things like curriculum management, workload planning for teachers. You have exam scheduling also as well. And then you have allocate also as well. You can see right in the center here. Besides that, you also have the student portal where students can actually have a study guide, registration, journey planner. Now, obviously, we don't have time today to go through all these things, but you can understand that because TimeEdit is a academic operations platform, you are able to actually take advantage of more features if you want to, and your operations require that. So for the context of today, now TP already has been using TimeEdit for some time now. You have the core, you have the autopilot, you have the preferences. I think today we're actually looking into a possible review of whether a new product called TE Allocate, which is the bulk allocation of students, can be applicable to your current workflow. Now, if you look at this, this is kind of okay. Maybe I'll skip this one and go straight to this one, which is actually more like the workflow that we all see. Where is allocate? If you look from the left to the right, you have things like where we do actually planning and data collection, where most of you are using preferences to set up your data, to collect your data, and then it goes into data processing before you do your scheduling. All right. Now, after your scheduling, I think this is where everybody is doing the work, is where you actually do the student allocation. And because of its experience and working with many IHLs, TimeEdit has seen a lot of good advantage for actually a allocation management tool, which is actually to bulk allocate the students into the timetable, right? And so that's right in the center there before the schedule is published. And you do see allocate pop up again because you can always do, student self-serve allocation and adjustments also as well. Now, RJ, is there anything else you want to add? Because this is kind of like the last slide already before I pass that to Jordan as an overview.
Well, one small thing is, yes, so the allocation product is basically where a administrator, often that might be the timetabler, is allocating the students to the various classes. And that can be done by rules. So that's something significantly different from the bespoke development which TP is already using. Yeah, let's stop there.
Okay, one thing I want you to keep your mind open when Jordan is talking. What you will see is actually the system features and functions. Now, you might think like, oh, that doesn't fit me, or doesn't fit my current process. Hold your questions. I think the main part is just first. I think the main part of Jordan's demo is to let you understand the mechanics of how the system works. So basically, it's like the first thing is like first principle of function, right? How does the whole thing work? The logic of that. So even if it doesn't fit your current process, don't worry. We can always have a question and answer right at the end where you say, look, I understand how it works. Could you do this? So I think keep your mind open in regards to that. Now, as what RJ was talking about, what we want to do is actually allocate through a set of rules defining how to distribute and prioritize allocation of students to activities. Now, this sounds quite familiar because this is what I think TP is currently doing in the integration way, or what we're doing in student fitting. Fine-grained control over which rules to apply. And of course, because Time Edit has such a flexible data model, we can do quite a lot of configuration around what you'll be seeing from Jordan's demo. All right, so Jordan, I'm going to pass the time to you now. Is there anything else you want to add at this level before you actually open up the system to show them?
Yeah, I'll just grab grab the share from you, if I could, and then I will just quickly set our foundation on what, and then we'll jump into the system itself. So before we do look at Allocate and look at some elements of registration as well, just for those who may not be as familiar with parts of the scheduling process, the way we get what we're getting here is that we're going to start working with a real timetable. So to get that real timetable, you will have collected information. It might have come in via import, it might have come through our preferences tool, through our curriculum tool, via API, come from a variety of different sources. And then you schedule that using the data manager feature that we have, which generates student groups. Now, this is important because when we look at Allocate, we're going to work with some student groups, and we're going to start categorizing student groups in certain ways based on the usual sorts of student fitting use cases that Trevor's just talked about there, where we're going to break those groups down and give them different experiences. So just want to set that foundation before we jump across. Now, I will also aim to have as much time as possible for questions at the end. So if the demonstration's quite short, that's probably intentional. It's pretty easy to see the key features. I want to make sure that you have time to ask questions, and we break this thing apart in the way that you need to make sure it's all understood. So we'll get into it now. So this is an example of Allocate. This is my Allocate interface. What I've done here is I've selected some certain classes that we're going to work with, some certain course instances, and then some classes within these. And I can see based on this what key information I need in front of me. For example, names and codes of each module or course. Key information like the enrolled actual enrollments versus expected enrollments. And for example, where I have a discrepancy, or I don't have enough capacity based on my expected enrollments, for example. Now, keeping in mind, any instance like this, where I have some sort of potential issue, is all aggregated in this issue list. Whereas you can see I have lots of issues that I need to resolve, most of them being empty classes that I can, from here, in bulk, remove. So another huge benefit, but we'll jump into that a little later. To explain what I'm seeing in front of me here, I have 3 courses for the sake of today's demonstration, nice and simple. Now, the way that this might be, as a user who's accessing this interface, I might be a scheduler specifically. I might be, alternatively, someone in the schools or similar who is responsible for only a certain portion. And so based on permissions, we can control that. To give you an idea of what it might look like if I'm responsible for a larger portion, I'll get rid of my filters, and we'll see that I have at least 1,000 different courses. So you can see that the whole system can be supported through this. We're going to head back to where we were before. We had our 3 that we're going to work with. Now, based on this, let's do some actual allocation. So the way that this system is designed, what it's intended to do, is to give you an indication of what kind of classes have you got planned based on your curriculum structures and based on your scheduling, what's there, how many students need it, and how are you going to spread those students out across these different groupings. And with this interface, the first thing we can do is look at the structure. So here, for example, I've got history and ringing economics. I've got a seminar, a computer lab, and a lecture. That's what's being taught on a weekly basis in this particular module. And I have, for example, 5 seminars and 2 computer labs, the way that I have the sizes and things to make sure that they're all spread out. And then I have a lecture. And I can click into any one of these and start to look at information around what's involved. Now, I've been playing with this, so we've got some discrepancies that we're going to resolve. I've got a plan size here of 6, which is obviously not correct, because we're expecting many more students for this lecture. And what we're going to do is up this to 30 because we've got 30 enrolled students. We'll hit save. It's going to change that figure for us. And now what we might do is start by simply allocating these students. Now, we can use an auto allocation to do this in bulk. So everything with auto allocate will automatically allocate. But I'm going to allocate this particular one manually because I want to show you something really interesting. So when we allocate one or more modules, one or more classes and groups, we can hit allocate after we've selected which ones we want to do. And that might be, for example, a whole module at a time like this. But we're just going to do the one. It's going to tell us what's going to happen in here. So I've got one student set group that is all of the students that are going to be taking this lecture. And in that group, there are 30 students. That makes sense. Next, it's going to confirm the settings that I have in place for this specific run. So it's telling me, don't allocate students if it would create a conflict, is one of the settings I've got. And another one is, any student groups, if I've got multiple groups, fill them up and then move on to the next one so that I can get rid of any empty groups. That's how I like to do it based on my settings. Again, not super relevant because we're just going to do one group, but you can see how anytime I run an allocation job, anytime I do some fitting, it will tell me what's about to happen before I do it based on my settings. Next, just confirm that I'm good to go. And let's do it. And it's done. Now, we're not expecting any issues, of course, because it's only one lecture and all those students should go into it. And that's exactly what we get. But if we want to dive into this, we can click Download Allocation Report. And a really cool thing with this, if I just swing across here, hopefully you can now see the report that it's just generated for me. And I'm able to see in quite intricate detail all of the key pieces of information. Now, obviously, this is quite a small data set because I want to show you the indicative version, but I'm able to see exactly what was done. So if I've got multiple course occurrences, multiple activity types and groupings and things, they're all reflected. I'm able to see how each individual student was allocated, whether it was successful for that specific activity in class, if it wasn't, what the reason was. And if I want to, I can navigate from here to an individual student's registration interface, which is where we're going to have a little bit of a look later. We're going to look at the student-facing interface. But I can go here and see, where did that student end up in this interface? What does their broader timetable look like? And if I need to swap them, what options do I have? Like so. And that's all from that report. So after every allocation job, I can assess the success of that job. I can then navigate to and resolve any specific conflicts if they do occur during the fitting process, if I like. So super, super powerful auto-allocating interface there. So this is one piece. Now, if I'd like to make some changes to this or make some modifications to this, let's have a look at what this looks like. Let's hop on out of IS 306. We'll go over here to small 339. So a different subject. Within this subject, you'll see we've got some things in this column here. I've got 5 tutorials, a lecture, and then an art exhibition at the end for everyone. Now, these 5 tutorials, I want them to be targeted at different groups. I want students to be fitted for to these different tutorials for different reasons. So as you see for number 2 here, it has dedicate track. So if I click into this, I can see that this specific tutorial is dedicated only to students within this program of study. I can, of course, have multiple programs of study and then use this sum of capacity to break it down into portions. So if I want 25% of the capacity for this one, 50% for another, and so on, I can break that down. But I can do this via any sort of different grouping. So this just is based on your data model and the information you have for your students or student groups. So it's as rich as you want to make it. But some basic categories, for example, things like gender and nationality are some really common ones that are utilized. And so I can do some things like that with this one. I might leave this class and I might do this with another one to give you a bit of an example a little later. When we jump into the student interface, we'll see what happens when we, for example, hide or unhide classes or dedicate them to tracks based on student data. But the key being here, we're able to dedicate, for example, this to a specific group of students. Similarly, this one's hidden. So I might have students that are allocated to it manually or auto-allocated based on criteria, like the dedication criteria. But I might hide this from registration for specific students. And what that means is when students look at their options, they don't see 5 tutorials. They see at most 4 because this one's hidden. And they have to be in this program of study to see this one, for example. just before we do jump across and look at what that looks like, all of the controls for this are in here and something that you can do. So, for example, if I want to hide it, it's as simple as toggling this on. If I want to set a buffer, if I want to have some capacity set aside, whether that's for a later registration period, if I want to do multiple sequential allocation or registration periods, or if I simply want to have a buffer and manually assign students into it based on whatever criteria or based on my own preferences as an educator, I can do that. There is also a piece here called linked tracks. Now, linked tracks is really useful if you want to create a specific set of choices for students. For example, in Small 339, it's not super useful because we've got a lecture, 5 different tutorials, and we've only got 1 option for the art exhibition. So no matter which tutorial they go to, they all go to the same lecture. But we might instead have, like in History and Ranking Economics, I've got 5 different seminars and 2 different computer labs. So I might want to link, for example, Seminar 1 with Computer Lab 1, Seminar 2 with Computer Lab 2, Seminar 3 with Computer Lab 1, etc., etc. And then when students go to select these, they can't select those 2 different classes separately. They select them as a single package, meaning that if I've set up a certain class-free pathway or I've got a certain stream that I want students to go into, I can craft those streams and enforce them on students. I can then also dedicate these. So I might create a link track that is like a package for students to select, and then dedicate that to students in computer science, whereas another one is for the engineering students, for argument's sake. Alrighty. I'm about to jump across to a student interface to show you how this updates live. And then in the last piece, we'll look at some change requests and how those get handled and sent across to the core system. Before I jump across to looking at the student view, any questions so far? Alrighty. Do feel free to chop them in the chat as well if you're not comfortable jumping in, though you are very welcome to jump in. But yep, feel free to pop them in the chat if you do have questions, and I'll just get Trev and or RJ just yell out if there's a question in there you want me to stop for. All right, team. So this, again, is the staff-facing view. This could be a staff member in the schools responsible for these specific courses, like a convener or something, or it could be schedulers doing this in bulk. All right, so whatever user role we like, but it's a staff member. We're instead going to look at the student's view of this and how changes that a staff member might make will influence what a student sees. So to start with, let's go back to our old friend here, Small 339, where we see we have 5 tutorials. So any student here by start should see 5, but we've hidden 1, and another one is dedicated to only if you're enrolled in this specific program of study. So a student will see 3 or 4 based on our settings here. And if I go across here, this is an example of the registration interface. Now, I'm Nicholas today, as the name implies. Nicholas is a male identifying student. So Nicholas, when he looks at the tutorials here, he sees 3 options because he's not in that program of study. And of course, he can't see the hidden option. But if we make some changes, let's say we take tutorial 3 here, and we really want to, for whatever reason, dedicate this one purely to students who identify as female. We want to give female students better opportunity. Let's make that change. Cool. Super easy for me as a staff member to say, right, creating a certain experience. Now, if I head on back here, Nicholas sees 2 options. It's instant. It's that easy. So as I make changes, we then see those reflected for student options. We can hide or show things to students as we like. If I want to unhide this class, let's say I have a class that I don't allocate students into, I don't use, but I keep it just in case, hide it from registration. And then later in the process, as I'm keeping track of how many students are fitted, I see, yep, okay, I do need to open that one up. So I will need to resource that class. Let's unhide that. And we'll head on back over to be Nicholas. And it's open. So as we open things up, students are immediately able to make use of it. Now, this is obviously true both of the allocation started by staff members where students are put in those classes, or true of, like here, the self-registration process. Now, I want to point out some differences for students and staff members looking at the interface like this. This interface is used in 2 places. It's used for students, But we also have an individual student adjustment interface that staff members can use to help students. And that might be individual staff members choosing for students. It might be student advisors, lots of different options. But the reason I point this difference out is, as a student here, I can see I've got a Wednesday, Thursday, or a different Thursday option. I can't see, for example, how many seats are left, but I can see that I can swap into these ones. I can also see where something might create a conflict. And if I click the little calendar up here, I can see why. I can see I already have a tutorial at this time. And so I can go and move my classes around and shift things to make the timetable that I want. But I always have at least one clash-free option because I've used the data manager to create those study combinations that give me this clash control. So I'm already registered into one, and I can swap into others. And I can see, again, where I'm going to create a conflict. And I can do that from this interface or from the other interface that we're in before, the list interface. In contrast, if I now switch back to the staff member view, and let's say I look at the students I have in small 339, I click view students, I see all the students I have, see them listed here, and I can see where any students have conflicts or not. Let's take my man Nicholas here. I see it's a very similar interface, but I see some slight differences. For example, I see how many students are in every class, where I have buffers, I see those. And if I go now to the tutorial, I see all 5 options. Because I'm a staff member, I should see what's hidden. I should see what the dedication rules are. I should see where there are buffers. So I should be able to make those decisions. And I can also swap students in where there are conflicts. So I have the options there to be able to do this and then obviously resolve things later. This is from an individual student perspective, but I can also view all of my students for one or more modules and then go through and resolve any conflicts that might have occurred. And those conflicts would only occur in the instance that, for example, you have electives that are allowed to clash, and you might allow then students to do this. So we have an interface like this to allow you to adjust and resolve issues with student allocation or registration. We also, as we saw at the start, have the ability to craft specific journeys for students and allocate them throughout the classes, either in bulk using our allocate button here or using our auto allocate feature here, which for all the classes where auto allocation is enabled, will auto allocate them. Noting we can set auto allocation well ahead of time so that we don't need to manually trigger that for every one of these, just to make that clear. Now, there are 2 more pieces I want to briefly show to you, is how do we make some changes or request some changes, and how do we see where there are potential issues. So I, at the start, hinted that I have an issue list here. The issue list will record anytime there's an issue, like, for example, here I have higher than expected enrollments, that could cause an issue. I only have, for example, 5 seminars, not enough space for 30 students. I was only planning for 25. So I should maybe create an additional class, or I should increase the capacity of my existing ones. Lots of different things I can do. I also have here, for example, groups where there are no students allocated. So let's click this, and I can see all of the different course occurrences where I have empty groups. Let's look at this one. This one's a big one. This might be one of my more popular, say, engineering course or something. And I see I have lots of classes that are empty. Now, this registration period's closed, so I've set my system up where a registration period's closed and I have empty classes. I want something to happen. In this case, I want to be notified that I have these. We should cancel them. So we could, in bulk, kill all of these extra classes. Hence why it's showing up as an issue in my issue list for me to be able to go and address this stuff. Now, if I jump back over to my history and rigging economics, we might make some changes. So I've got a class here. We could do some things with it. If we have done some previous changes, we'll see notes of the change requests, of course, here. But I can, at any point, for one or more of these, hit the edit button, do a couple of things. I can edit the buffer or registration, hiding from registration just from here, as opposed to going into it. So I can do those things in bulk if I want to do that. Or I can also add a request. And so here I might say, add an additional class. And we might put some information in here, like more popular than we expected or something similar. Now, when we hit save, that's going to pop across. And now I'm going to change my interface. So now I'm heading on over to core. this will be more familiar to a lot of people. This is where schedulers will work, obviously. If I just change my interface up, what we see here is our reservation list. So for anyone who doesn't schedule, this is just a list of all the reservations in a certain time frame that we can then search and filter on. And here is our visualization. So our clash visualization, if we want to move things around, also indicates when things are happening. So super useful. But from here, I can do lots of things. And one of the things I'm going to do is click the little hamburger up here and click request list. And this is going to show me everywhere I have some requests, like, for example, add an additional class for this series of classes. And using my interface, if I want to take a whole period, I can see all of the classes that fall in a certain period. Like here's my 9-week set. And I might from here be able to add an additional class, make some changes on behalf of the person who has requested those changes, and then I can do things with it. So for example, if I add that class, like say I want to add one on this 2-hour class, if I look at the interface up here, I can see where I have the white space. That indicates that I could create a class without a clash. I could add an additional class like that in there. That's an additional class. And then I can hit confirm added class. And that's going to give me then the ability to go back to that person. So if I change this here to confirm added class and hit accept, that then goes back into their interface. No, I'm not actually going to create the additional one here. We probably don't want that. But if we head back into the allocate interface here, we can, of course, see the list of classes that we had. And we can see in here, if we do have some information, that we've confirmed the changes we make. Whether it's a room or can change class and so on, that information popping back in here. I can, of course, always see any pending change requests I have in a list here as well, and navigate through them. I can see exactly the classes on which they apply as well. So lots of different things that we can do with Allocate. So, as I mentioned, fairly quick in terms of the demonstration today, but we've covered student fitting, and we've covered looking at different student fitting cases based on, for example, dedicating it to certain groups. We might dedicate it to multiple groups in certain proportions. And as we've seen, as we do that, it'll make it visible or invisible to different groups based on the dedication rules that we've set. We can auto or manually allocate these. And we've seen that when we do so, we get a really comprehensive report like this one. That allows us to see where activities were allocated, if they weren't, what the reason was, and what the conflict is, and allow us to then go into individually, if we want to even, and resolve some of these things in our system. We also saw the student-facing interface and how that differs from the staff-facing version of that. And then we've had a little bit of a look at change requests and how they can be handled, accepted or rejected, and so on, and how that integrates seamlessly with your existing core system. And if I move classes and things as well, or hide classes or anything like that, the updates are instant in your student registration interface. So I'm going to stop here and open the floor to any questions.
Thanks, Jordan. Maybe at this time, Xiaoping, any thoughts on behalf of the group, or anybody wants to just ask some questions to see whether any of these things can apply to you currently?
Maybe I just ask a simple question now. Okay, Jordan, can you go back to the first diagram you show us? It's allocation, there's a diagram, there's a process, something like that.
Yeah, this one?
Yes, I think maybe the previous one.
Yes, okay. Bear with me a sec. This one?
Yeah, this one. Okay, so from here, I see there's a planning data collection. So for the student allocation, you need to plan on the data collection. But from the data collection, I saw there's it's from the preference and also the curriculums. Okay, so this is actually the module you need to use. Then collect the data from this. Then you can start to do the so-called allocation, right?
Yeah, so using the system that I just did, this is generally the way that it's done. It's not absolutely 100% hard required, provided that we can get the data in the correct structures. But our tools are set up to do this in a really seamless way. And so we strongly, strongly recommend that you do use those tools. And I think this next slide does show this in a visual way. So
Yeah.
we're collecting data in our preferences tool like this, or from upstream sources of truth or from import and so on. We then use our data manager tool to create the student groups that you saw on all of those different pieces. Each of those has a student group, and within the student group, we have the real students. So, to go into core and look here, I've been working with that seminar where I added a class. If I right click on this student set group, I can see within it, I have 5 real students. And it created some student set objects that are used for clash control during that process prior to student enrollment. The system does that automatically using our data manager tool, but it needs that input data to do it. It needs enough data to make that work, certain data points, which is why we generally use preferences and or curriculum to get that data together. And then once you have that data, and we generate these, Allocate can simply spread students across the groups based on the structures that you have.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I ask question to Trevor because TP actually is because when I log in the TPSS one, right? The T I didn't see any curriculums. I don't see this word in the menu. So means we didn't purchase this one, right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
didn't purchase this. You don't have curriculum. What time edit has? Maybe Jordan, you can go back a few slides
Yeah, so
with the main one.
you don't need
Yeah.
curriculum to be clear shopping. It's a different system, but it can
Yeah.
be used, or preferences can be used.
Yeah, but if TP don't have the curriculum, so means my first question is that TP's data actually is uploaded manually, is it?
Yeah, we're taking your data for your courses from your student management system, I believe. Right?
Okay.
So we're not actually, but of course we have a curriculum product, but you don't need that curriculum product. So we are actually getting a few information, right, from your student management system, your course codes and everything else. Yeah.
Okay. So means TP still can upload the data lah to use allocation lah. This product lah.
Yeah. We have customers who are using the whole, data manager, generation flow, all the things I just talked about, and do it starting with uploads rather than any use of curriculum.
Okay. Yeah.
Lovely.
But it'd be good to also, Xiaoping, as you also clarifying all this. Any questions from the users that are present now in the meeting? Just want to give, no question is not appropriate. If you're seeing this, is there anything that you feel that is relevant to your current thing? And again, I just want to add that caveat. It's good to hear from you, because then from there it's easy to just get Edmund to maybe follow up on this, because he also understands your student fitting quite well. And then, come up with a strategy for that. But I mean, the first question is, does this even make sense or not for you guys? Does it make it easier for your workflow, your work process? Any comments from the team?
This is Christine from School of Business.
Yeah, hi, Christine.
Hi, I want to clarify. Currently, the way I see it is still students will pick the class that they will be attending, whereas for TP, we are allocating the students ourselves.
Yep.
So if I see this, now student is now can be made as an object. It means that even if the system auto allocate students, they can check for conflict of students' timetable.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Wait, hold on, Jordan, before you answer. That's a very good question. So there are actually 2 parts to what Jordan showed us, okay? The first part is actually bulk allocation. That's on Allocate. That's where you actually saw the screen where he actually show you all the classes, and then you can actually bulk allocate the students. This particular screen. Now, the second part that he showed, which is a different product by itself, is where the students can individually register themselves. Both are separate. Both are linked, but both are also separate. You don't need for the student to actually do their own self-registration, but some institutes do allow that, and it's it is really makes a good user student experience, right? Because the student actually has a bit more control over how they register for the classes. But that is optional. You don't need to activate that. All right. But what we are showing you is both, so that you understand that it is possible not only just to bulk allocate, which you mentioned, but it is also possible for this. After you do the bulk allocation, the students can actually do some adjustments also as well. Jordan, anything else you want to add to that? I just hope that they are clear on that.
Yeah. No,
Alright.
good call. The only
Mm.
piece I'll add is what we see in front of us here, this student adjustment. This, again, students don't, like Trevor's saying, students don't need to be able to self-register for us to be able to use this. And for example, look at, specific student groups or specific courses and view individual student enrollments, check where there are conflicts, if there are conflicts, and jump into this interface and resolve those or change student registrations from a staff perspective. Students don't need to have any ability to do this, where you can still manage individual student registrations as well. So you have that power without allowing students the option. And that can be done with all bulk auto allocation and then tweaking afterwards if you prefer, which is what it sounds like TP really will suit TP, which is the idea that we might have lots of dedications or tracks built in certain ways so that when we do the auto allocation, the system allocates students based on your fitting criteria in bulk, one run. And you're able to then get that report and look at if there were issues, what those issues were, and why you had them, which is what we looked at here.
Sorry, I rephrased my question. So your report shows that if there's a conflict, the system will not feed the student, but it will come out in this report to say student is not fitted.
Yes.
All right. And if we have students, let's say the students are on your list to show that they are not fitted, when we go in to do manual student fitting, will the system able to alert us if we pick up a class to try to fit the student, but it's already in conflict with his timetable?
Yes.
It
Yes, the
will
system
already.
will constantly. Yeah.
All right. So it will have a message to pop up to say, I cannot allocate student to this subject class because it's a conflict of his timetable.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
No worries. The subject class changes, just to be clear, would generally be, so if you've got individual classes in here, if I was to try and change a student, right, just to show you what this looks like. If I was to go to the student we used before, see conflict here, I will see that. If I was to try and move Nicholas from this Thursday class he's registered into to the Wednesday class, it would cause a conflict. So it shows me that. I can also see that graphically, that I already have a tutorial that he's in here. So if I try to move him here, I would cause a conflict.
Jordan?
Yes.
Yeah. Can I assume once the conflict is resolved, it will remove from your report?
Yes.
Can, right? Okay. Another thing I want to raise is beside these conflicts, let's say that if the student there's certain subject or subject allocation to there and is missing, this student is missing in one of the tutorial class, will the system flag out?
Do you mean a student who hasn't been fitted?
Yeah, somehow the system miss out. They suppose one of he need to attend a tutorial class for that modules.
Yep.
But it did not fit in.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So let's have a look and make sure I understand. I've got an example here, I think. So see here, I have history and ring economics here. I have incomplete. I have these students who need to be fitted to some classes which are not in yet. See, they're not fully allocated. These are my students who need to be fully allocated. I'm able to see those students there and resolve these. So I could go through, see I have the 2 out of 3 here, for example. I'm able to see that these are the students that are not fully allocated. And I can see that in this case, he's not signed into the seminar. So I can see that on an ongoing basis. These bars here show us the allocation progress, and I can sort this. So if I go to the top here, I can sort all the students who are not fully allocated or are unallocated in general, and I can resolve those. the report will tell me why at the start as well. If I do a bulk job, I can see which students were not allocated and why.
Sorry, just now you mentioned you do a bulk job. What do you mean you do a bulk job?
So
This one is by autopilot or what? Because sometimes we do manual fitting.
So you may do manual fitting by, as we just saw, doing some student adjustments. But you can, of course, if I say one or more modules like this, I can allocate like I did at the start of my demonstration, where I do an allocation bulk job. Or I may mark some or all of my classes here, subject classes, with this auto allocation. When I have it marked as auto allocation, when that is enabled, when I click this button, it'll automatically allocate everything with that enabled. So I may have, when I plan this, auto allocation as part of the rule for one or more subject classes. So it might be the lectures get automatically allocated and then I manually fit the computer labs for argument's sake. And then when I hit auto allocate, it will allocate all the students automatically that are in the different groups with auto allocation on. So I have lots of ways that I can do the automatic job based on your preference and based on what manual fitting should be done.
Okay, maybe I rephrase again. Let's say these students are supposed to attend. I mean, it's a must that attend one tutorial class, one lab, and one lecture. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, because for tutorial class, I might have 5 tutorial class, but it's for different group of students.
Yep.
Okay, but for a student, he will need to attend one lecture, one lab, one tutorial.
Yep.
But somehow I carelessly miss out the lab. So will the system flag?
Yes, the system will flag. The system will show them in this incomplete where we were before, and I will see the students who are not allocated. I will see that I need to allocate them. And this is where I need to do the manual fitting for these students. So this 10 students might be the ones who have missed the lab and are in the tutorial and the lecture, whereas these are in all 3. Hence the 3 out of 3. And I see that on an ongoing basis.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
No worries. Any further questions?
Okay, Jordan.
Okay, you go.
Seppi, go ahead first.
Okay. Maybe regarding Louis, the question here is that the allocation, this product actually can flag all those not allocate where one the student one. So for TP cases, because TP don't have this product allocate, then when we manually upload the student data into the TE, whether this product can flag out those not so-called allocate correctly, the one. Can use this product to flag out those one. Just like Louis mentioned that some student didn't missing or some where didn't allocate properly.
Yeah, I understand. So this is probably a question that we need to finalize with Edmund based on the best approach with your data structure. But my answer would be, from a preliminary basis, that if you were to use this product, the answer to your question is yes, you would be able to see which students after doing an upload, but you would do the upload to generate the student groups that are used for this process from a data object perspective. And then you will be able to see all of that in here. We need to configure this interface to see your data in the right way, so to speak. But I would need to confirm with Edmund exactly which steps that entails with your data model, because it may mean some changes slightly to the structure or to the process. We just need to understand that better. But certainly possible. And the expectation is that if you were to use this tool, you will see where there are, for example, like you said, gaps in fitting where students have missed one part of subject class or something similar.
Because I think this is a very common cases after the student fitting they are fine. How come so many students is not fitting well? Because allocation actually is not done properly because of that. If I think if have this feature, then I think will help a lot for them . From
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
it's very
yeah.
easy to see lah, which one is not so-called allocate properly lah.
Exactly. It's one of the key. I think when we were at TE Con Chubbing, I mentioned when we were having a conversation that, when we work with Singaporean customers and to an extent as well, Malaysian customers, we bring a lot of information back and share needs with the team who are building these products. This is one of the things that I was very clear on when we talk about student fitting in the Singapore context. Seeing where students have not been successfully fitted is a really important feature. Hence why we have this. That's what this came from.
Okay, so maybe Trevor, you to double check with Eamon because he is not around today. So to consider this one to get back to us.
Yeah, definitely. So just to be clear,
Okay, thank you.
the answer is yes, you will have this feature. It's just a matter of confirming with Trevor and Edmund what the path would look like for implementing this if you did want to go through that and what that involves. And those guys can give you that confirmation.
Okay, thank you.
Very welcome, Shopping.
Jordan, if you can go back to the PowerPoint slide where we have all the modules. Okay, maybe for the benefit of the TP team here, hope I can just give some clarity. So when we implemented for Temasek Poly, during that time, Allocate was still in development, right? So that was not out yet. And what we did during the implementation was to do it in a way where it was a bit more bespoke, all right? So Time Edit is what do you call it? A software as a service, right? A SaaS solution that is basically something that is provided for everyone, and then you configure. You don't consider Time Edit a bespoke product. It is a product that's highly configurable because it's meant to be able to cater to many different type of configurations. So that's how Time Edit is set up. And when we did the implementation for Temasek Poly, we actually did it for core, for preferences, for autopilot. You also have, of course, viewer also as well. And then in the course of that, because we recognized that we needed to fit the students, what we did was actually we built a very bespoke way via the integration, right? Where we took the students and then we fitted them into the classes. Now that fit Temasek Poly very well, but of course it's not maybe ideal because you're actually building a very bespoke kind of engine, right, to suit your requirements. What we're proposing here is actually called TE Allocate. Again, you must remember, Allocate is not a bespoke solution. It's a highly configurable function, right, that actually bulk allocates. And so the next step would actually be to review, number one, whether we can actually replicate the functionalities of what we've done in that bespoke integration in Allocate. I think that's the first one. And then the second one is to then ask TP whether this makes sense for you guys, right? Does it save more time if you were to actually do that, and does it make your experience a bit better, right? So I think that's the intention of that. So I think my question, I hope you understand the framing of this, is to ask the group here, would you like us to proceed to actually do a deeper evaluation, and we can take this together with Edmund and maybe Xiaoping and maybe one or two other users that are very familiar with this, and then we do an evaluation. Then this evaluation can be brought to TP management to consider whether they would like to do this. Obviously, the evaluation will include whether we meet all the feature requirements, number one, the cost implications, and of course the third one being whether it will save everybody's time, as well as make it a more pleasant experience. I think that would be the recommended suggestion. RJ, is there anything else you need to add? I see you smiling there.
No, the big thing is actually now you have a fixed set of rules, more or less. And with Allocate, you can vary. So because you can say, well, today I want this rule and tomorrow I want that rule. And that's a big difference. And for example, there has been done some research around, let's say, allocation rules. And one of them was, let's say, students who live further away from the Polytechnic or from the campus can start later, for example. And so if you work, for example, with your postal codes, yeah, so students who live nearer get earlier classes, students who live further away get later classes. And that will, for example, increase the student satisfaction, for example. That's, well, example where you can play with it. Okay, let's do that next year. Example. Yeah, so and yeah, so and maybe a few years later there will be new rules, or possibly we have, or you can add those new rules to allocate yourself, and then allocate the students in another way. So that's again the flexibility. You hear that word more often. That is what we will offer you.
Very good, Jordan. We have a question from Norzima. Can we limit the number of objects that are tied to the subject class? Can you read that as is in the chat?
Yeah. So 3 class groups tied to 1 subject class. The max capacity of the subject class is 30, and I want each of the 3 class groups tied to the subject class to be 10 for max capacity. Great question. Nozima, yes, you can. So to give you one example of how that might be, I have 5 seminars here. While it's not 3, we might have, for example, each of these have 5, but they have 5 because I have limited the size here. I can increase or decrease this, but I can also ask for larger rooms. So the size here is not necessarily tied to the capacity of the room. It's the size that I want. This is already scheduled, right? Hence why I'm able to look at this for student fitting. So I already have a room on it. That's why I see the capacity of the room. Now, obviously, when I do my scheduling based on my input data, our system will optimize the best possible room for this. So this is not indicative. This is just an idea. But if I instead want this to be 50, I could make it 50. I won't because I've only got a 24 room. But here is where I can control, for example, 10. Now I could do this in bulk as well, so that I might have 3 or 5 groups with 10. I can control the subject class maximums as I like. And then when I do my allocation, it will only allocate up to that capacity. And that includes as well if I want to have a buffer. So if I want to have 10 as my capacity, but I actually want to run with 5 to start with, because I'll do a second round of student fitting later. I might do some first, some priority students, maybe students who are elite athletes, for example, or who have international students or whatever it might be. Do those students first, and then I might do a second round of student fitting when I take the buffer off and let the rest of the students go in. I could do multiple rounds if I want to. So I have very intricate control over my subject class sizes.
Sorry, what is example your seminar? Example seminar 3, you have few class group connected to it. A few groups connected to seminar 3 example. And then each of the group, I only want 5. Example, you put seminar 3, 30 capacity, 30 as the capacity, maximum capacity. But I have 3 groups connected to seminar 3. So I want each of the group only 10.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So you need something to group them. Let's say for argument's sake, it's an enrollment that we have. So let's pick 3 groups.
Okay.
And I might have my 3 groups.
Oh,
like
okay,
this.
by percentage, okay.
Yeah. I might do percentages. I might work it out differently. But here is one way I could split it in 3 ways. Give me 3 groups.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
Hey, Jordan, continue here. I'd like to add on to what Nozima was asking. The group that you are saying, is it the same class group as in the TE core?
Yes, all the same. And when I allocate, it instantly updates. So
this BA list, or the first track that you say, that one is a class group in TE core.
Actually, what this is because I'm breaking this down right now by programs of study. So this is that student has to be enrolled in this to be in this group. So this wouldn't be by a class group. It might instead be using dedicate to class group. So I just need to have that data here. I don't have that data in my data set. But if I had a class group piece, I could have it, class group 1, 2, 3, and then they would be the same class groups as are in 4. Yes.
So if we have tied the relationship in the TE core, like let's say this class group to tie to this subject class, Would it show the track here?
Yes, but you just need to tie them together in the data set. Yeah.
Okay. And also I have another question, like what
Sure.
Louis was asking just now, about the fitting. So you're saying that after the fitting, they will show that student were fitted, like let's say two out of 3 classes. The 2 out of 3, is it a subject or subject class?
Subject class. So
Subject.
yeah. So I'm looking here at just this. What we were looking at before is just this one subject. So the 2 out of 3 might be, the seminar and the lab. They were not fitted for the lecture, for example. So just the subject classes that I was looking at there. I can look at that in bulk if I want to.
So if the student have 5 subjects, would I know like which one is not fitted?
Yeah.
Like,
so when we
not fitted fully, yeah.
Yeah, I can sort and filter the subject to see which ones are not fitted. So I can only, if I want to, I can see where students might not be fitted based on, if I add in additional subjects here, I can see then the allocations, and based on the ones that I've selected, I can see which ones are not fitted. And of course, if I click into the student, I can see it's these ones with the red.
Okay.
Where
So
they haven't
it's
been completed.
Okay. And sorry, one last question about the student group that you keep mentioning. So that student group, is it the same as class group or is a different thing? Student group in this TE Allocate.
Yeah, so the data model here is different to the TP data model, but the student group is very, very similar to your class group concept, actually, in practice.
Okay. So if we
very,
set up,
very
we set up
similar.
in TE Allocate and not set up in TE Core. Is that what you mean? When we do the setup?
No. It's set up in one place and it gets used across all of the different modules. And this is why when Trevor was saying earlier that he will work with Edmund and some subject matter experts from your team, just to make sure that when we talk about things like the student set groups that are required for this process to work, we map that against your current class groups in a way that makes sense for TP, but also works with the Allocate piece here.
Sure. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, you're very welcome. Great questions. Thank you all for great questions.
Jordan?
I have oh, yes, Christine.
Sorry, yes, one more question is to add on to Yatsam, because Yatsam typed in a question, because I think her mic is not working very well. The basis of that question is, we do have students taking electives, and these students come from across class group, meaning they are not tied to any class group. So we want to know that when the system feeds students into this elective class, is the system's intelligent enough to say that, oh, students' timetable clash if we feed him into class A. So the system will look for the next available class for the student to be fitted.
Can I just understand the start of the question? So you said about students who are in classes that are not tied to a subject, did you?
And not tied to a class group.
Okay. So, all right, I might just need you to clarify a little further on what that means here. So, for example, in this system that I have in front of me here, I have a specific subject course instance that I'm teaching, and then I have a lecture and tutorial. Are you saying a student who's not tied to any one of these groups is just enrolled into this specific course and then
this specific subject?
Yeah, so into this subject, they're not tied to anything. It's just fit them in wherever they fit.
Correct.
Yes, the system will do that, and it will show that where there are conflicts for those students, if there are conflicts for those students. But generally speaking, those are the students who will be the least likely to conflict because they don't have any constraints on them.
No, the thing is, okay, the premise of all this is in our year one students, the students have to take a set of subjects, everybody, similar set. However, there will be 2 electives that the students get to choose from a buffet of 9 electives.
Sure.
So this, the 2 subjects, 2 electives they are taking, they are not tied to any class group. So we want to know whether the system is smart enough that when they try to fit the students into this elective class, is able to check for conflict before they fit.
Yeah. So just to confirm, we talked about not being tied to a class group, but those electives will still have a delivery structure, right? Like there'll still be a lecture
Yes.
and a tutorial for
Yes.
argument's sake.
Yes.
They're just not tied to one specific one of those. They could just be in
Yes.
any of them. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Yes, the system can handle that. You don't need to be tied to a specific lecture for this to work.
But so
You
the
don't need to
student,
be in one specific class group, to be clear.
yeah, so the system is able to check, let's say if the student is not available for lecture class 1, they can, but he's available for lecture class 2, he will feed the student to lecture class 2.
Yeah, if there are 2 options for lectures that student could be applied to, right? Let's say there are 2 options. The student could go into either of them. It will put them in one of them. Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
if they're not
can.
available for one, it will do that. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
Okay,
Now, I apologize, team. I
gotta-
do have a stop. Yeah. I am more than happy. Any further questions that do come through, Trevor and the team and I will work together to make sure that we answer any further questions that do come through on this. But obviously, as Trevor mentioned, and I'll throw across to you here, Trevor, there'll be some further steps from our side on mapping that out with the TP team.
Yes. So a quick one, just a show of hands from the participants. Do we have your support for us to do a further review of this? Now, why I'm asking this, obviously, because it does take time for us to review your current workflow and then map it out to allocate. But from what you've seen in this last hour, are there any objections for us to proceed with a review of this? And the review would be actually done by Edmund together with maybe Xiaoping and one of you guys together with Jordan to actually see whether a deeper dive, whether Allocate can fulfill all the things that you need. And if the answer is yes, then we actually will put up a proposal to management. So any objections from the TP side, you can actually just raise your hand. If not, we will actually consider this as something that we can move forward to do a deeper dive, a more technical evaluation of it, and then make the recommendation to TP. Yeah, we're good.
Lovely.
Xiaoping, anything from your side as you're coordinating this? Are you comfortable with this recommendation?
Yeah, actually, I'm okay. I'm okay if you can, step up. Yeah.
Okay, good. We will do that. Thanks, Jordan, for your time. RJ, anything else? If not, we can call the meeting a close. Yep, we're good. And please, if you have any other questions, Sanusa will send you the recording. Please feel free to send it to us. But I think it was a good session today, Jordan. Thank you. I think I observed that there wasn't anything major that we could not do. I think which is a good thing. I think we just need to now coordinate that on Edmund's side. Yep.
Yep, absolutely. It's just aligning the way that the system is laid out with TP's current process and expectations there. Thanks everyone for your attention and wonderful questions. Great to see you again. We'll speak soon.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great week ahead.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jordan. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.